Alright, what's happening, class? The goal for you today is for you to be able to find the volume of rectangular prisms. Alright, so we've already found the surface area of rectangular prisms, triangular prisms, right, and right square pyramids. Alright, now what we're going to do is try and find the volume of rectangular prisms. Alright, so volume. That's the amount of space taken up by a 3D object. And it's usually measured in cubic units. Alright, usually it's measured in cubic units. Alright, I want you to put a star next to this. Alright, write this down. It can also be measured in cubic feet, cubic yards, cubic miles, and many other things. Alright, so volume can also be measured in cubic feet, cubic yards, cubic miles, and other types of measurement. Alright? Remember, area is measured in square units. Right? Area, square units. This is 1 square unit. Right? And our exponent, remember, it's a 2 because it's 2 dimensions. Right? We've got length and width. So you know what? Put a star next to this. Write this down next to this. 2 dimensions, right? You've got that. Because we have length and width. So 2 dimensions because we have length and width. Volume is measured in cubic units because we're talking about how much space something takes up. Not just the area of it, right? How much surface area or how much area it covers. We're talking about how much space it fills up. That's what volume is, how much space it takes up. And that's measured in cubic units. See how this cube, class, it takes up space? It's not just flat like a square. This thing takes up space. Alright, that's what volume is. This right here would be 1 cubic unit, or 1 unit cubed to the 3rd power. What that means is that we have 3 dimensions. Alright, 3 dimensions. We've got length, we've got width, and we have height. Alright, we've got height. So put a star next to this, write this down. 3 dimensions, right? We've got this down, 3 dimensions, because we have length, width, and height. Alright, length, width, and height. Alright, so get that down. And on to the next slide. Alright, here's our rectangular prism volume formula. Alright, all we have to do is multiply the length times the width times the height to find out the volume. How many cubic units, or if it's feet, or if it's yards, or miles, or centimeters, or meters, kilometers. Alright, but right now we're just talking about units. So, there's 2 ways, well really there's 3 ways you can figure out the volume of a rectangular prism. Alright, you can use this formula. You could use the way too long method of counting the cubic units. Right, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 cubes in that shape, in that object. 6 cubes. So our volume will be 6 cubic units. Or, especially when you're dealing with bigger numbers, you're not going to be able to count all those cubes. You're going to use that formula. So how many cubes, or how many cubic units are in that prism? Well, the length we'll say is 2. The width we'll say is 3. And the height is just 1. And when we multiply all of those, guess what? We get 6 cubic units. Alright, that's all you have to do to find the volume of a rectangular prism. Length times width times height. 3 dimensions. Now, you can also, to find the volume of a rectangular prism, find the area of a base and then multiply that area by the length of the entire prism. Alright, and that's going to be true for triangular prisms and square pyramids. Alright? Well, actually, square pyramids, we're going to have to use a different formula. But with prisms, just prisms, alright, you can find the area of the base and multiply it by the length of the whole prism. And remember, the name of a prism, alright, is derived, comes from its base. Rectangular prism has a rectangular base. A triangular prism has a triangle for its base. Alright? So let's say that's the base. I just flipped this thing up so you could see it. Let's say that's the base of a rectangular prism. Well, you can find the area of the base, right, by doing length times width, 2 times 4, which will give us 8, and then multiply it by the length from that base, the length of the entire prism, which is 3 units, times 3, and we get 24 cubic units. You could do length times width times height, length times width times height, and you get the exact same thing, 24 cubic units. Alright, so it's up to you what formula you want to use. But don't just try and count the cubes. It's going to take way too long, especially when we're dealing with really big shapes. And you're not always going to have all those little lines on your prisms. Sometimes it's just going to be blank faces, blank sides. Alright? Now, solve for the volume of these rectangular prisms. Well, class, I've got 3 feet, 5 feet, and 3 feet. Alright? I've got my width, 3 feet. I've got my length, 5 feet. And I've got my height, 3 feet. Alright? Now, class, if there was another number in here, let's say this was also labeled 5 feet because it's the same length as this. You aren't going to multiply 3 times 5 times 3 times 5. You only need to multiply the length times the width times the height. You should only be multiplying 3 numbers. So if I multiply 5 times 3 times 3, 5 times 3 is 15, and 15 times 3 is 45. So our volume is 45 cubic feet. Alright, so in this case we're dealing with feet. This problem, we've got a prism that deals with yards. Oh, and you know what? I need to erase this and make that a yard. So hold on a sec. Let's get rid of that. That should be yards. Alright, so I've got my length, I've got my width, and I got my height. Well, when I multiply 4 times 2 times 6, right, 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 6 is 48. So my volume is 48 cubic yards, or yards cubed. There we go. And again, look class, a 3, 3 dimensions. A 3, 3 dimensions. Alright? Next 2, I want you to solve on your own. So, solve for the volume of these rectangular prisms. Alright? On your own, try and solve for that volume, solve for that volume, give it a shot. I'm going to go over them, and we'll see how well you do. Alright, so volume, we gotta use our formula, length times width times height. So I'm gonna, let me use my red marker. Alright, so I've got volume equals length times width times height. Alright, well I'm gonna say the width is 7, the length is 5, and the height up and down is 4. Alright, so I've got my length, I'll say, is 5. My width, let's say that's 7. And my height, we'll say, is 4. Well, when I multiply 5 times 7, I get 35. And then when you multiply 35 times 4, you're going to get 140. So our answer is going to be 140 miles cubed. Talking about volume. Volume is always to the 3rd power because we've got 3 dimensions. Alright, and then this one, again, alright, volume equals length times width times height. Well, let's see. Our width, how wide our shape is, these are all the same. Alright, I'm going to say the width is 6 millimeters. Our length back is 5. And our height is going to be 10. So I'm going to multiply those together. So volume equals length, which is 5, times the width, which is 6, times the height, which is 10. So I'm going to multiply all of those together. When I do that, 5 times 6 is 30, and 30 times 10, that's just going to be 300. So you should have gotten 300 millimeters cubed. Now let me make that look a little better. And that's it. Alright? That's all you had to do to find the volume of those prisms. Alright, so don't always expect class to see a grid on here so that you can count them. A lot of times, they're just going to be labeled with values and their unit measurements. Alright? So, I'll see you all tomorrow. If you're having a good night, peace.